So our first speech will be from Cadence Hamilton. Cadence is a senior at Western Hills High School. She is involved in many activities at school, to include being secretary of the Beta Club, assistant drum major of the marching band. She's an AP capstone student and a 2022 Governor's Scholar. Cadence plans to attend the University of Kentucky, Lewis Honors College, and major in strategic communications. Please welcome Cadence Hamilton.
I'm just as excited to be here as I'm sure all of you are here to have me. Maybe move this over here. I'm a little short. Way back in kindergarten, I decided that I too wanted to be a teacher. I'm sure all of you have heard a similar declaration from students that you've had in your classrooms. I held on to this declaration of a career up until about the 6th or 7th grade, and then at that point, I decided that I'd figure out something else. I didn't pick anything else at the time, but it didn't help that my beloved mother was a deaf and hard of hearing teacher, and so I wanted to walk in her footsteps. I think that's part of the reason why I held on to it for so long. But the teaching choice stuck with me not just because my mother was a great teacher or because I had a love for learning at a young age, but it was because I had teachers in front of me who showed me what it meant to be a real person, to show me what it meant to care and what it meant to be dedicated to other people. Not to mention that being a teacher was one of the careers that was easily accessible to me, along with being a police officer, a firefighter, or a doctor. But I think that there is a reason why teachers are grouped in with these other superheroes, because we know that teachers are truly these everyday superheroes. My fantastic elementary school, then middle school, and now high school teachers have given me a reason to continue looking at this option as a career, even though it's not currently my first choice. I believe there's a reason why in movies like The Freedom Riders or Matilda with Miss Honey, the iconic Miss Honey, why teachers are played so magnificently well. It's not a fantastical idea because teachers just are this magnificent. I've learned it's because that teachers are cared. They care for their education, they care for their children, and they care for the future. Even all of you here, there's a reason why you're sitting in this room. It's because you care. You care about me, even though I'm not your student. You care about the future of schools continuing. This is the reason why I still so strongly consider teaching. Because I have had teachers show me what it means to live life. So I've long had a passion for different cultures. And when I was in kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher, Miss Career, went to China. And so for most of the year, long before the Zoom calls were made popular by the pandemic, I video called my teacher 7,311 miles away. I had one of the best long-term subs ever, which I'm sure all of you can appreciate, a long-term sub. And she helped me understand more about the different culture of China than I think I would ever have had an interest in learning about. That sub and my teacher, when the teacher came back, she came back for each student at the ripe age of 5 years old, a personalized pair of chopsticks. And then she proceeded to make us a traditional soup that we all forgot the name of immediately. But she told us that it was important to learn more about the world. She taught us that it was never too late to explore it, because she had been a teacher long before I stepped into her classroom. She showed me what it was to be dedicated and to care. She was in China, she was on vacation, and she still video called us whenever she got the chance. While I haven't kept up with any of my interests in China, those key lessons about dedication, about care, about understanding the world stuck with me. And I'm glad to say that that's a passion that I continue to hold near and dear to my heart. So 13 years ago in kindergarten, I wanted to be a teacher, but also 5 years ago in middle school, I wanted to be a teacher. Now, I feel very appreciative to say that my 6th and 7th and 8th grade years were far better than the average teenager might admit. I dedicate this to a handful of teachers, Mr. Barker, who's in the crowd today, but also Miss Manning and Miss Lewis. These two women became immediate role models to me. Not only did they reinstill my love of reading again, but they taught me what it meant to be a friend. They did this by being each other's friend. They recognized the extra effort that I put into my classwork, and they encouraged me for it. But they also mastered the equal balance that it took to encourage students and to give punishment, to encourage students and show them that they were the big kids that they thought they were, but then also to show them that they needed to be stern with them sometimes. What appalled me was to think that they did this every single year. They took in a new group of students going through the toughest parts of their life, puberty, and they learned them. They learned their personalities, they learned their attributes, and they brought them up. They learned how to reach them in their different ways, even the ones that they only had for 2 months out of the entire school year. My teachers trusted my peers and I to converse in a classroom, and then told us it was our mistake whenever we didn't get our work done. Small efforts like these opened my eyes to what it meant to shape people, to the depths of what it meant to shape people. Authority, kindness, trust, and care. We were all underlyingly taught these values. We were taught that our independent work ethic was going to be the one thing that would carry us through our lives. Through this most pivotal moment in time, we were taught to trust ourselves. I think you may start to get the gist of what I'm saying, that when I head off into college this fall, I cannot tell you with 100% certainty that I will not take up an education major. The past 4 years in high school have shown me more about being a teacher and being with other people than I ever thought I would grow to learn. I've always had an appreciation for teachers, and it continues to grow. My sophomore year of high school, I met Mr. Hale on a Zoom call. And from that moment, he hasn't stopped impacting the way I view the world. If in middle school, I was taught to trust myself, in high school, he taught me to trust my peers. And that's something much scarier. He pushed me and my classmates to consider each other's perspectives. He taught us that we needed to learn to encourage each other and understand where we disagreed. He knows that in our ever-growing hostile world, that's a quality that we all needed. He encouraged us to disagree because he knew that censorship was not the answer to our world problems. He told us to not be ashamed of our beliefs, but to believe even more in them, be prepared to back them up. One time he even gave us an assignment where we had to argue something that more than half of the class disagreed with. Finding something to disagree with that many people about was scary, but it taught me that their opinions were just as important as my own. Teachers consistently go above and beyond in this aspect. They teach each of their students what it means to be a person, and they put a piece of themselves in each of their students. I'm sure all of you are represented through all of Kentucky because you've put a piece of yourself in each of your students. But even more than that, I know that your students are in you as well. Even my senior guidance counselor, who I've only grown to know better in the past 2 years, she's made an immense impact on me. Not only did she help me apply to the Governor's Scholar School, and she helped me to apply to college and to apply to scholarships, she became someone that I could talk to. She became someone who conversed with me about anything, from politics to what her son did last night. So 13 years ago, 5 years ago, and even today, I still honor you all for being teachers. I know the work that you've put into it, the heart that you've put into it, the time that you've put into it. Thank you for your persistence, and thank you for your time today. Good afternoon.
Okay, our next speech will be by Ms. Olivia Barker. Olivia is a senior at Western Hills High School, where she stays involved as the president of her FFA region, president of the student council, and captain of the volleyball team. In her free time, she enjoys spending time with her parents and sister and practicing her calligraphy. Next year, Olivia plans on attending Center College in Danville, Kentucky. Olivia?
When my father was 18, he enrolled at the University of Kentucky as a finance and economics major. When he graduated, he took a job selling law and accounting software to accounting and law firms. And he proceeded to do this for the next 18 years of his life. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that job sounds like, well, a mouthful. Maybe it was this, or maybe it was the birth of his firstborn that made my father have a change in aspirations. Thus, when he turned 40, he enrolled at Bellarmine University for his master's in education with the full support of my mother. His first job in the teaching profession was that of a long-term substitute, that is, an art class substitute. Now, my father is a 6'6", broad-shouldered man, so you can imagine the expression of his students when they walked in to hear that he would be teaching them about the arts. Nonetheless, he is a likable man, and not to mention a surprisingly skilled sketch artist, and his students took to him nearly as much as he took to them. This became the first step in the next 18 years of his life. When he finally settled for his first permanent job, and I mean permanent because at 58 years old, he's still in the same classroom, he became a 7th grade social studies teacher. As a little girl that had hardly yet broken 4 feet, I used to come running into his classroom every day after school. I'd watch his students talk with him, his peers talk with him, and even his superiors talk with him. And I could tell that he'd earned all of their respect. But then again, you never really know something until you live it. Thus, in my father's 13th year of teaching, I stepped into his classroom for the first time, not as his daughter, but as his student. It was an amazing experience, and years later, I would question him, as any teenage girl with a throat for gossip would, over who he liked and disliked, who caused the most trouble, who'd been his favorite student. As I'm sure you would all confirm, teachers really do have favorites. And getting to hear his thoughts on a group of people that I'd known for years, I found myself a bit surprised. Of course, he told me he liked all the people I would have expected. The ones who always did their assignments and showed up on time, who were friendly or funny, who made friends easily and stayed out of trouble. But the surprise came when he told me he also liked some of those that I avoided in the hallways. The ones who rarely showed up to class and sat in the back when they did. The ones whose assignments were blank at the end of the hour and whose names were all too familiar amongst administration. I wondered why my father thought fondly of these students. The answer came to me one day when he was telling me about one of these students that had gotten into a fight. He said he had a talk with him, told him he understood why he was angry, that he couldn't expel it in that manner, and just when I thought the story was over, my father added, "I get it. I was a punk once." This is very true, by the way. If you all think you've had a hard time with your students, it can't even compare to the time that my dad gave poor Miss cows when he was in high school. Nonetheless, he turned out to be, in my opinion, quite all right. Watching my dad give the students who may have been troublesome or difficult the patience that he once needed seemed to be just what they needed. I came to realize that these students trusted him. They confided in him. They would return him the same respect that he'd offered to them. This is the first hardest part of a teacher's job. The task of taking even those students who have made your day longer or your work more difficult and refusing to be the next person that will give up on them. The task of showing their peers that have avoided them in the hallways that they are worth a hello or how is your day. The task of investing in a student in the hopes that they will start investing in themselves. There have been days when my father thought this task was too hard for him. There have been days when his buttons have been pushed and his limits tested. There have been days when he's walked through the door, tossed his bags to the floor, and sworn that he would never step back into his classroom in 18 years. And yet, I would always wake in the morning to find his laptop pulled open, the blue light reflecting in his glasses, and him ready to tell me about the lesson plan he's just typed. This is the second hardest part of a teacher's job. to keep showing up. When you are underappreciated, overlooked, or mistreated, to keep showing up. Not for your bosses, not for your colleagues, and maybe not even for yourselves, but always, always for your students. Today, 6 years after I had the privilege of being my father's student, I have another teacher that shows up every day for me, Mr. Hale. In fact, he never fails to remind us that he has never showed up late, even living 40 minutes away, every time we try to hand him a tardy slip. Now, there are no two people that are more different than my father and Mr. Hale at first glance. My father likes to wear polos, and Mr. Hale likes to wear a shirt with the entirety of the poem that we're reading in class printed onto it. My father likes to wear tennis shoes, and Mr. Hale likes to wear shoes with the face of his favorite wrestler embedded into the sole. But at heart, the two are much more similar than first glance permits you to see. Of course, similar in the fact that they're both excessively sarcastic, but more so in the fact that they're both investors. Investing time and energy and heart and painstaking hours into people who are looking for a direction. One of Mr. Hale's favorite sarcastic tendencies is when one of his students teases him about having forgotten something. He'll jokingly reply, "Sorry, I guess I was just too busy changing lives all day." Of course, he means it facetiously, but I think that there's truth in the statement. Because he invests every single day in his students and my peers and in me. But there was one day when Mr. Hale decided to make us invest. No, I'm not speaking metaphorically. He literally told us to all bring in $1 and made a class spend of about $30. Just when I was suspecting embezzlement, he told us that we could each have 1 minute to convince the class to give us the bid, before adding that it could be completely truthful or complete nonsense. Admittedly, I heard some pretty interesting stories that day. Someone claimed that they'd save it for 30 years and use it to save the world. Another insisted that they'd refund everybody 50 cents back. I personally told a convincing though completely fabricated tale of a gambling uncle whose debts needed repaying. A few fake tears for dramatic effect. All in all, though, none of us took it too seriously because we wholeheartedly expected that it'd merely be a game, at the conclusion of which Mr. Hale would thank us for playing and refund us our dollars. It was shocking then, and mildly heartbreaking, when we watched him drop all of our dollars onto the desk of the person we'd voted winner. We all tried a lot harder after that. He made his point and he made it clearly. You have to truly argue something with heart and soul to convince others to invest in you. In our case, invest 30 crumpled dollar bills. This is another hard part of a teacher's job. Not teaching them about the content, but teaching them about the perspective. I reflected on why he made us battle like that, and I realized it's because his job is not to teach that content, but to show us why learning is worth it. And this is a gift you all bring to people like me. I may remember little about the Pythagorean theorem, or about common slices, or about the laws of motion, but I will remember the preciousness and the purity of learning. So thank you for showing up every day, for every angel and every troublemaker of a student, to remind us all of the sweet and subtle delicacy that is learning. Thank you.